In November 1923, Munich erupted in gunfire, leaving 20 dead and Adolf Hitler in handcuffs. The world assumed his conviction would end the threat. Instead, his prison sentence became a crucible where humiliation turned into obsession and failure became fuel. How could a fortress for justice become the breeding ground for catastrophe? The answer starts with a courtroom spectacle about to begin. The failed coup left the streets of Munich stained with blood and the city in shock. Within hours, police rounded up the leaders of the uprising. Adolf Hitler, arrested and charged with high treason, was no longer just a fringe agitator. The trial, beginning in February 1924, drew crowds and headlines across Germany. Reporters packed the courtroom, their notebooks ready as Hitler entered in civilian clothes, jaw set, eyes fixed straight ahead. Instead of shrinking under accusation, he seized the witness stand. Over 4 hours, Hitler delivered a speech that stunned even his enemies. He insisted, "I alone bear the responsibility," casting himself not as a criminal, but as a patriot betrayed by weak leaders and a failing republic. His words, printed in newspapers from Munich to Berlin, reached thousands who had never heard his name before. The courtroom became a stage. Judge Georg Neithardt, known for his right-leaning sympathies, allowed the defendant wide latitude. As prosecutors pressed him on the violence of November 8th and 9th, Hitler turned every question into a declaration of purpose. In his telling, the deaths of 20 men, 16 putschists, 4 police, and a bystander became the sacrifice of martyrs. Outside, the public watched as a defeated rebel was recast as a political figurehead. The looming sentence, 5 years of fortress confinement, seemed harsh, but the spectacle had already transformed defeat into opportunity. The final gavel fell, but the real consequences were only beginning to take shape. April 1st, 1924. The Munich court delivered its sentence: 5 years of Festungshaft, fortress confinement, at Landsberg Prison. On paper, it was punishment for treason. In practice, it was something else entirely. The German legal code reserved Festungshaft for gentlemen offenders, not common criminals. There would be no forced labor, no shared cells, no iron bars at every turn. Instead, the accused would live apart from the general prison population, shielded from the harshest routines of incarceration. As the gates of Landsberg swung open, a clerk recorded the new arrival: Adolf Hitler, height 1.75 meters, weight 77 kilograms, health noted as moderate strength. The intake register listed not just Hitler, but his closest followers: Friedrich Weber, Hermann Kriebel, Emil Maurice, and Rudolf Hess. These were not strangers forced together by chance. They were loyalists, bound by shared ideology and the memory of a failed coup. The staff at Landsberg processed the paperwork with bureaucratic precision. The sentencing document, stamped and filed, outlined the privileges of fortress confinement. Hitler's name joined the official roll, yet the formality of the process could not disguise the reality. The man now behind these walls was treated less as a criminal and more as a political guest. Judge Neithardt's ruling, final and unchallenged, had opened the door to a confinement unlike any other. With the administrative rituals complete, the gates closed behind Hitler and his cohort, not on a prison, but on a waiting room for ambition. Within weeks of his arrival, Landsberg's visitor log began to fill at a pace that defied the idea of solitary punishment. Over the course of his confinement, Hitler received about 330 visitors, political allies, party loyalists, and journalists, all eager to sit in the comfort of his cell. On April 20th, less than 3 weeks after his admission, the prison allowed a birthday gathering. 30 to 40 guests crowded into the fortress, turning the day into a celebration rather than a sentence. Conversations spilled into the evening, laughter echoing down the corridors that were meant to isolate. The flow of visitors was more than social. It was strategic. Letters and messages passed freely, carrying news of the outside world and party business. Among the most devoted was Rudolf Hess, who took on the role of amanuensis. Day after day, Hess sat opposite Hitler, transcribing fevered dictation into manuscript pages. By December 1924, the draft of Mein Kampf was nearly complete, a text born not in secret, but in the open, with the tacit approval of those meant to guard him. privilege and constant affirmation turned a prison cell into a writer's study, and a failed agitator into an author of hate. Night after night, the cells of Landsberg became the setting for ideological seminars. Hitler, surrounded by his most devoted followers, led long discussions that spiraled deeper into the dogmas of hate and resentment. These sessions were not debates or corrections, they were rehearsals. Each man in the circle played his part, reinforcing the leader's certainty and sharpening the outlines of a new movement. No one challenged or questioned. Instead, they took notes, asked for clarification, and echoed his words back to him. The prison's intended isolation dissolved into a closed loop of affirmation. By September, the warden Otto Leibold prepared his official report. He described Hitler as reasonable, frugal, modest, and polite to everyone, especially the officials at the facility. The memo, dated September 18, 1924, praised Hitler's discipline and willingness to submit to all restrictions. These words, written on prison letterhead, became the justification for release. On December 20, 1924, the release order arrived. Newspapers carried the news with a tone of admiration, describing a man transformed by hardship into a symbol of misunderstood patriotism. The doors of Landsberg swung open, not with the clang of justice, but with the applause of a public ready to forgive and forget what had truly been incubated behind its walls. When justice nurtures grievance, danger grows in the shadows. Today, extremist voices still find comfort where vigilance fails. The cost of underestimating hate is a lesson we cannot afford twice.